With the City of Eterna season, Torchlight Infinite's gameplay got a lot better, and its crafting system was massively improved. But now, the Twinightmare season looks to take that to the next level. And this isn't just because the naming has clearly leveled up, as saying Twilight and Nightmare all at once is really difficult. So today, I'm going to go over some of my favorite things from the reveal, and a few things you might have missed which are extremely impactful to the gameplay. If you want to know more about builds in Torchlight Infinite, or you're just curious about what I'm going to be playing, well, do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, and for now, let's get into some of my thoughts on the season.
When Nightfall just began, no one was afraid of this lotus. It seems completely harmless. Only when it blooms, it leads people into the dreams. At first, there were only endless good dreams, colorful bubbles, and sparkling treasures everywhere. The lotus will bloom again, and a good dream remains a good dream even after waking. Until the Tide turns scarlet. The Nightmare has arrived. Fear, confusion, loneliness slowly consumed them. In their wide open eyes, the reflections of precious treasures still lingered. Nightfall is about to descend again. Don't you ever get trapped in the dream?
To participate in Twinightmare season gameplay, you need to encounter a mysterious lotus within your maps. This will let you enter a sweet dream. The sweet dreams have different rewards you can choose from after you complete them. Essentially, it's kill a bunch of monsters within the time limit. If you played Synthesis in Path of Exile, or if you're a fan of Lords of the Fallen, then this gameplay should look a little bit familiar to you. However, the rewards don't start out very strong, and the deeper you go into the sweet dream, the greater the risk of a dream becoming a nightmare, which is actually a good thing in this case, because the nightmare is when the rewards become real. You're able to escape and manifest them into reality, at least if you do it right. Because of course, there's going to be a lot of dangerous Ember monsters trying to stop you, and if they manage to stop you, a portion of your rewards will be lost forever. 6 chances and well, all of it's gone. You'll have to try again. Immediately, this stood out to me for a couple of reasons. The first is it's a delayed gratification reward, which are often not necessarily the most popular thing with ARPG players who want their loot and want it now. However, it has a lot of potential, where if you're strategic, you can get absolutely massive rewards by stacking up the right sweet dreams, then turning it into a nightmare. I also like that it's a little bit more forgiving than what we see from a lot of other similar mechanics, where you don't lose everything for failing, you lose a little bit. It's kind of like a second whole map within your map. Furthermore, the season's meta progression system, Dream Cloud Atlas, looks to make it fairly easy to customize. You'll be able to pick up all the points eventually, but from the start you can either go for things that enhance your loot, potentially making it more dangerous in the process, or instead, go for something that helps you survive better. And because, unlike the Cube of Rapacity's Avarice Code, you can unlock every talent if you keep playing, there's a little bit less stress in picking the best things early on. Now, as a seasonal or league mechanic, I really like this one. I think it does a good job of getting the risk-reward balance, which PoE tried to do with Ultimatum, the thing that was super popular, but hopefully does a slightly better job of the actual gameplay mechanics, since ultimately Ultimatum is just fighting a bunch of monsters in a circle, and at least personally I wasn't the biggest fan of that. Now we have new, completely unique enemy types, and because you're going to want to trigger the nightmare anyway, the bad stuff happening is not a chance, it's an inevitability. So you need to build your character to prepare for that. I also like the fact that a single failure doesn't erase all of your work. Something else I really like is that it's all color-coded. The sweet dreams are blue and the nightmares are red. This way, even if you're a new player and you don't know too much about what's going on, well, blue is what's setting up your loot and red is when you actually get the items. So you'll know at a glance which is which. The chance increases time after time, and I think there's going to be an optimal stage where you want to go into the nightmare and possibly get to pick some affixes to nudge you in the right direction. I don't know everything that's available on the Atlas yet, but hopefully we do have some control over that. Now, my next favorite thing about the season is Rosa, because she's an irreverent paladin. It actually seems like the sort that's a little bit less likely to spend time praying and a little bit more likely to be found down at a bar smashing some heretics to bits with a beer mug, because what else would you use at that point? Rosa is the game's first tank or defensive-focused hero, which is going to be pretty interesting, because most of the time, in Torchlight Infinite, you get all of your damage from your hero trait, and you need to focus on scaling your defenses through gear. On Rosa, you get a massive amount of your defenses from your hero trait, kind of similar to the underwhelming Frostbitten Heart, who now was buffed for this season. Rosa also seems to be a little more focused on cooperative play, since she has a pixel pull, where she releases a special ability that pulls all enemies in. And there's even a bit of mobility built into her kit, where she'll charge to enemies and automatically pull them in. Because Rosa is block-focused, it should be quite easy to get very defensive, though you'll want to hold a shield, and if you're holding a shield, you can be immune to damage over time effects, which means Rosa could be a very good boss killer, especially if you're bad at the game and need a little help because sometimes you stand in fire. Don't worry if you feel attacked right now, by the way, I'm describing myself as well. The last thing I'm really excited for is Dream Talking, the new crafting system. This can be used on 3 of your items and prevents you from crafting it the normal way afterwards. Dream Talking modifies certain affixes and replaces the implicit on your item, so you might not want to use it on a helmet or a chest piece. At the same time, though, those could have extremely powerful affixes, so there is an opportunity cost to be balanced, and that's absolutely a good thing, because you can take specific affixes from legendary items and craft them onto your gear. As you progress through the Twinightmare, you get to record different dreams, or abandon them if they don't work out. However, as you're recording dreams, you're also recording nightmares. So, when you apply an affix, you get both the dream version, which is generally something positive, and the nightmare version, which is something negative. And this is where things get really interesting, because I noticed some of the options were replace an affix with a blemish, or downgrade affixes to tier 1. And what if you don't need any tier 0 affixes on, say, all of your suffixes? Or what if you're using a temporary item where one of the suffixes is bad anyway? You could easily replace that with a blemish and keep the good upside from your implicit. Or alternatively, you could downgrade all the tier 1 affixes to tier 1, effectively bypassing the downside. It seems like it's a random pick 3 mechanic, so you probably will run into some situations where you can't get what you want. But when you can, it's going to be extremely powerful. This is why you can only do it on 3 items, and it should give a lot of people flexibility to add unique effects into their build without having to use the specific legendary item. To add those exclusive legendary affixes, you'll need Profound Dream Talking, obtained by challenging Paloma, Queen of the Eternal Sun. If you've played Torchlight Infinite's campaign and actually paid attention, then this might be a somewhat familiar boss, and I'd guess her mechanics are much the same. I'm certainly hoping that she's tuned more like the Lone King of Eterna than the Lawbearer, since I really didn't enjoy the Lawbearer fight, and the King of Eterna was a joy. But I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. Next up, I want to talk about some very impactful changes coming in, and a little bit of a philosophy behind it. Because I think it's often important when games are changing to not only understand that something's changing, but why it's changing. The first of which is, we're not seeing very many major nerfs this time around. There are some to Ignite Gemma, which, to be fair, probably leaves the build totally fine. You'll just do billions instead of trillions, or maybe trillions instead of tens of trillions. There's also a nerf to aura stacking, because that archetype was quite overpowered. But overall, they've focused this time on buffing underperforming hero traits, skills, and legendary items, to bring everything up to the average. And this makes me think that most things across the game are performing about where XD wants them to be. Because if you have outliers, it's a lot easier to nerf 1 or 2 outliers to bring them down to the level of everything else, and then buff a couple outliers to bring them up, than to try to bring everything up to the highest outliers. The fact that we're not seeing too many nerfs makes me think most things are performing where they're supposed to be. The game is, well, you could say, relatively balanced, and that's a really good thing, because that's when devs have a bit more freedom to experiment, do cool stuff, and try crazy ideas. You know, like taking all of those super overpowered legendary aspects that you had to wear a crappy 0-stat item for, and letting you put them on your good, fully crafted gear. Yeah, crazy fun stuff like that happens when games are balanced. And does it temporarily break balance? Yeah, that's part of the fun, and you just have to know that some of it's probably going to go away next time. Another really exciting and impactful thing is custom loot filters. You can now make your own loot filter in Torchlight Infinite, then share it with your friends. They did say that the UI is a little bit experimental and probably needs more work, and I agree it doesn't look like the smoothest experience. However, you won't have to spend time sorting through stuff on the ground. No more mousing over and hoping that it has the T1 affix that you want or is craftable in the trade house. Instead, if it's on your loot filter and it's visible, you pick it up because you've already sorted through, put in the work, and you know it's good. Because these loot filters can be shared, well, that means you can also yoink someone else's. Speaking of, does anyone have a loot filter that I could use? Because I'm really lazy at League Start and don't want to make one. If you have one, I guess try to leave it down below and see if YouTube's algorithm robots think it's spam and eats it. But if not, thanks and happy sharing. That said, loot filters aren't the only thing you can share. You can also share builds. And this is really interesting because I've wanted a way to really look at people's builds in detail for quite a while. I mean, wouldn't it be awesome to just go to the hero ranking, grab a build, and have a step-by-step walkthrough of everything you need to do to copy the exact stuff? I don't think this is really a replacement for a build guide, because the true value in a build guide for many, many players is explaining the why. You're copying it, but you're not just going to leave the exact gear that someone else had unchanged forever, right? You want to continue to improve your character. So you need to understand why things work, and that's where the best build guides come in. However, a lot of more advanced players like myself don't really need or use guides, and so just being able to look at someone's character, grab it, and try their build is pretty darn awesome. Especially because soul candles are now becoming tradable, meaning it's easier than ever to swap builds. Personally, I hope at some point in the future they remove the tax. I think it was a completely fine, transitory thing until the economy stabilized. But now we have a much better currency sync in crafting and compasses, so I would hope at some point in the future it gets removed. I also hope that at some point divinity slates become tradable. So I'm really, really happy that XD is taking the first steps to experimenting with this by making the powerful soul candles from City of Eterna tradable. Because I like swapping builds, and it's a lot easier to swap a build if all the things that I invested into it I can then resell later. Sure, prices might shift. Sometimes it's going to go way up, and other times it's going to go way down. But usually it balances out to the point where I could play a different build every couple days without having to stop and farm to make up for the loss, which sure, I can do it, but it feels bad, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And hey, if you want to try someone else's build, it's easier than ever. You can share it via in-game chat or link it to other players outside of a game. And speaking of the economy, the last really big impactful thing is they're merging all trade houses. Currently, the Asia, North America, and European trade houses are linked, but China's trade house was separate. However, in the Twinightmare season, China's trade house is joining the rest. You won't be able to play with people from other regions. You won't be able to talk to them, and your count information will not transfer between regions. Just the trade house itself. This means there's going to be a massive supply for a lot of items, especially because builds in China and builds in the West tend to be a little bit different. So their trash is our treasure and vice versa, which is really cool. Now I do have one slight concern, and that is if an item is so ubiquitous that everyone wants it, China is going to have most of a supply, which is then going to make it hard for players in the West to afford it. Because we don't really control the economy anymore, we're probably a minority. And that is one thing that I'm concerned about. However, XD does already have an answer, the ability to farm your own legendary items. This was something they experimented with last season in the form of an event. And hopefully, if there are issues like that, this could be added as a permanent self-balancing mechanism to the economy, though no official word on whether that will happen or not quite yet. And it's kind of just a wait and see. After all, the economy could just work flawlessly first try, which would be wonderful. There have also been significant improvements to the Netherrealm experience. New cards that got buffed, more cards for specific mechanics, some of which modify their behavior to make it easier, harder, more rewarding, etc. And also, you now only need 3 stars down from 5 to max everything out, so it should be about the same amount of time to max out your trait deck, which is good because it already took kind of a while. Furthermore, they've done a lot of back-end optimizations, making loading screens shorter, improving Path of a Brave, that kind of stuff. And both Solo Self-Found and Hardcore have been added to Torchlight Infinite. So if you're up for a challenge, then maybe try them out. Just beware, they haven't done any special balancing for these. They might in the future, and they might not. So for now, it's just a way to opt into more difficulty and challenge yourself. Last up, we've also got some new skills for the new season. And there's two in particular that caught my eye. Blade Whirlwind and Thunderstorm Beam. Blade Whirlwind looks like a shuriken throw skill, where you fire out a bunch of blades and they spin in place. You can then recall them to you to deal damage to enemies again, or leave them spinning on a stationary target as they'll continue to tick and deal damage similar to Sparkle. Looks like the name of the game here is going to be Play Carino, get massive damage buffs for attacking fairly infrequently, and then shotgun an enemy with all of your blades. To my understanding, you can't have multiple sets of blades out because whenever you cast the skill again, it recalls them to you, which should despawn them. So it's a kind of interesting way to completely ignore attack speed and hopefully snapshot as much damage onto them as possible. The other interesting idea is Thunderstorm Beam, a beam skill that doesn't require you to channel. Upon activating, the skill automatically fires lightning beams itself. Then, through your scaling, you get to summon multiple of the orbs which fire the beams. They'll kind of follow you around your maps and seem to be both quick and responsive. I personally really like skills that are high quality of life, and this seems kind of like the best part of minions combined with the best part of self-cast skills. And so I'm very, very tempted to just league start Thunderstorm Beam. But I guess Starstalker and Harmonious Field are pretty cool as well, they just don't catch my eye personally. So those are just some of the things that stood out to me about the Twinightmare season. But what about you? What are you most excited for? Is there anything you're concerned about? And what build are you going to play? Let me know down in the comments below, and who knows, maybe your build ideas will help me pick my own, because I am notoriously bad at that. I don't know why. I guess it's because when there's so many options, I just want to do them all. But weirdly enough, then I'll usually sit on the same build for 2 weeks after the season starts, because I just lose the desire to play everything. It's weird, and I can't explain it. But hey, I'm excited, and hopefully you are as well. If you want more thoughts on the season, or to see the full Q&A that I did with XD recently, then I'll link that up in the card and down below. Or if you want to keep up with all the Torchlight Infinite news and builds, then head over to MaxwellGG. With that said, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. Link to that is down below, and it helps a lot with the channel. That's about it for me today. Thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to the season start, and to multiplayer, which yes, is on the horizon, though no strict date yet. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you again sometime soon.